Again, welcome, North Bridgers. I'm so honored to be here. Again, I am trying this sitting down thing. So if I'm rocking, if I'm moving or something like that, just bear with me. Y'all know it's really hard for me once I get excited to stand still or to sit still. So just please bear with me. But let's dive down into this word today. So we're going to go to the book of Numbers. Okay, we're going to go to the book of Numbers. And the purpose of this word, the title of this word is In the Company of Normal. In the Company of Normal. In the midst of all the COVID-19 pandemic and the stay-at-home orders and all the instructions of wearing masks, protecting ourselves, and all of those things, in the midst of all of that, one of the things that I keep hearing is that this is not going to be, we're not going to be able to get back to normal, and so we have to find a new normal. And I keep hearing that, just getting a new normal. What's going to be normal going forward? This is not normal. And having to experience what we're experiencing has taken a lot of people by surprise. It's been challenging for many and disheartening for others. And we're trying to find a sense of normalcy in the midst of the circumstance. So this message is titled In the Company of Normal, because when I was thinking about that, I said, what is normal? What is normal? Because typically when you have chaos, when you have a pressing circumstance, when you have a situation that challenges you and makes you uncomfortable, your first instinct is to resort or to revert back to what you consider as normal, or what is your normal. Your normal is your center point. That's what we go back to. So my question is, what is normal? So let us go to the book of Numbers chapter 13, verses 27 through 28. Then we're going to jump down to verses 31 through 34. Okay? Numbers chapter 13, verses 27 through 28 says, Then they told him and said, We went to the land where you sent us. It truly flows with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. Nevertheless, the people who dwell in the land are strong. The cities are fortified and very large. Moreover, we saw the descendants of Anak there. Now let us jump down to verse 31. Same chapter, Numbers chapter 13, verse 31. But the man who had gone up with him said, We're not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we. Verse 32 says, And they gave the children of Israel a bad report of the land which they had spied out, saying, The land through which we have gone as spies is a land that devours its inhabitants, and all the people whom we saw in it are men of great stature. There we saw the giants, the descendants of Anak came from the giants, and we were like grasshoppers in our own sight, and we were in their sight. Verse 34, so all the congregation lifted up their voice and cried, and the people wept that night. And this is the word of the Lord. Here in Numbers chapter 13, we see Moses sending out spies to go out and check out, survey the land that was promised. Matter of fact, Moses said, hey, go check the land out that was promised. And they come back, and the majority of them give a terrible report. Only two, Caleb and Joshua, only two. Caleb and Joshua gave a favorable report, but the majority of them came back and gave a terrible report. But when they gave the terrible report, what they said, yes, it's true that the land is flowing with milk and honey. As a matter of fact, here is its fruit. We've brought back some fruit so you can experience. But nevertheless, these people are big. They're big in our sight, and we're small in our sight, and we're even smaller in their sight. And so they gave a negative report and said, hey, this is not possible. We cannot do this. So we're talking about in the company of normal. So when I look at what is normal, for most people, I mentioned that when chaos ensues, when a circumstance is pressing, when people are pushed up against the wall, they go to their natural inclination of what is normal for them. And for many of us, we're experiencing change and we're experiencing challenging times. And I'm seeing what's normal for most people, and that is to be afraid. When you look at what's what's people how people are responding during the pandemic and the changes, people are afraid to stay in their homes a little while longer. People are afraid to persevere and to push through. People are afraid of what's to come. People are afraid of what's been experienced. People are afraid of what's going on now. People are afraid, and so they're responding in frustration out of fear. And so that's been the normal. Most people, just like we see, a majority of the people within the spies, the spies that Moses sent out, the majority of them were afraid. The majority of people that we associate with, the majority of the people that we congregate with, the majority of the people that sit in the pews in churches, the majority of the people on your job, the majority of your friends are afraid. And not just of what's going on, but they're afraid in their everyday lives. Fear drives a lot of their decisions. Fear drives their indecision. Fear drives their inaction. Fear drives their action. How many people now are responding to the fear of what could happen in their lives based off of past experiences? I was talking to different people this week, and one of the things I hear is, man, I'm just afraid of being like my mama. I'm afraid of being like my daddy. So they spend their lives fearful of that outcome, and so therefore they continue to pursue. That's what drives them, not being like this person or that person, not experiencing this. I'm afraid of going broke. I'm afraid of being jobless. I'm afraid of being by myself. I'm afraid. Everything is driven by fear. Many people I talk to, they have great ideas, have been given great opportunities, but they hadn't pursued anything because of fear. Fear is people's normal. So when we talk about we have to find a new normal, the first thing we have to do is we have to develop a different mindset to say that fear is not going to drive us. This is people's normal. What's your normal? What we're seeing is exactly what people have always lived their life based off of fear. So many people have been raised up on fear. So this is the normal. So we've been living our lives in the company of a fearful normal. And so here we see the majority of the spies that sent out are riddled in fear, are controlled by fear. Despite the evidence, despite the experience of the promise. So let's look at the passage of scripture. What are some things that we can extrapolate? What are some things that we can get out of this passage of scripture? So one of the things that I see in this, the first thing that I see is that they give a report. They said, yes, this land is flowing with milk and honey. However, they said the land is filled with giants. But they said this land is filled with milk and honey, and here is some of its fruit. Here, partake, participate, experience the fruit. Man, it's big fruit. Pomegranates, figs, grapes. Oh my goodness. Look at these. Here is its fruit. So they're given the evidence. And what I see is that despite the evidence, what do the people do? They lead with the last impression. Here's one thing that I want you to understand. People will always lead with your last impression. My mother used to always say, baby, whatever you say before the but does not matter. Everything is nullified by the but. Mama, yeah, I did this, but. Mama, I wanted to do this, but. Baby, I love you, but. Everything is nullified before the but. Here, there, however, was the but. They said, it's filled with milk and honey, but here's the other side. People will always lead with your last impression. And when we understand that, many of us, when we really understand that, we're wanting people to, when we look at the last impression that we may have given, we want people to treat us before we showed our butt. We want people to deal with us according to before the but. So you want people to treat you like you have integrity, but you've never shown but after the but, you show that you didn't have integrity. You want people to treat you like you're a changed man or a great father, but you showed your but, and so all they can remember is the last impression that you gave, which was contrary to what you are stating. People will always lead with the last impression that you give them. So here we see the people saying, this is great, but we're fearful. So people focus on the fear. Right now, you hear messages saying, oh, we're going to get out of this, but we need to be afraid. We need to be concerned. People will always focus on after that. I can't expect someone to treat me or to deal with me in a way that's contradicted by my butt. Once you show your butt, that's what folks are going to focus on. So number one, people are always going to lead with the last impression that you gave. So here we have to be consistent. We have to be consistently focused on the promise. We've had a glimpse of the promise. God has said, okay, you're going to go through some challenges, but I promised this to you. And I'm going to give you a glimpse. I'm going to let you taste. I'm going to let you see. I'm going to let you taste. I'm even going to let you smell. Imagine the sweet aroma that filled the air from experiencing and witnessing the ripened fruit of the promise. They got a piece of it. He said, I'm going to let you see it. I'll let you smell it. You've heard about the promise all this time in your life. You've heard it for years as you've been coming out of Egypt. You heard about the promise as you were going through the wilderness. And now you're hearing about the promise, but now I let you see it. You've gotten close enough to see and to experience through touching. Now it's tangible. You're so close, but now you want to be overcome by the fear. Some of us, we have to understand that we have to move forward. We can't let the fear drive us. When we're talking about finding a new normal, we need to be in the company of perseverance. We need to be in the company of statements like, oh yeah, there may be some concern, but, because now when we rephrase that, we now say, okay, there may be some concern, but we're going to push forward. We're going to go ahead. We're going to plow through because this was promised. We're now in promised territory. So here we need to understand that we have to find a new normal. And what that new normal consists of is finding new understanding of how to deal with the circumstance. We can't be fearful. So another thing that we look at the scripture and we find is that it looks like many of the Israelites, it looks like they didn't appropriate their progress to the promise. What do you mean, Pastor? Well, it's important to recognize progress. Now, that's something that many people have trouble doing. It's important to recognize progress, but it's really important to recognize the progress as it relates to the promise. See, because if you don't recognize the progress as it relates to the promise, you fall victim. You can fall victim. You're more susceptible to falling victim to allowing the progress to be your promise. There's a difference. Some of us, we recognize progress, but since we don't recognize progress as it relates to the promise that God has given, we take the progress and we glorify the progress. Ooh, yeah, I did this. Ooh, yeah, I did that. But the progress and you rest in that progress and you get comfortable in that place. You start to rest in the place that was meant to be a pause. You start to rest in your rest area. You start to get comfortable and you stay there so long that you're more comfortable there and you're okay with just being in that place and not taking the promise. You start to make your progress your promise. And there's a big difference because now you're okay with getting in the vicinity of the promise, but not pushing through and participating in the promise. Here, Israel, they sent out the spies and they were in the vicinity and they were okay with the visitation. They had made progress. They had heard about the promised land and they continued to push forward. But there were a couple of people, there were two people, Caleb and Joshua, and said, this is not the prize. Where we are now is not the promise. You even had a group that said, hold on, let us rest on this side of the Jordan. And with that, they were okay with visiting, they were satisfied with visiting the promised land, but not determined to overtake it and participate in the promise. This is an example of people making the progress the main thing. See, when we progress, we need to make sure that we look at this is what God has promised. This is what we're shooting for. Yes, it's great that we made these strides, but we still have this amount of journey to go. We still have this much work to do. We're still not through. Some people just seem to be okay with the fact that you wrote a couple of chapters. Some people seem to be okay with the fact that you started a business and you got your logo. Some people seem to be okay with the fact that you got married and had a great wedding. Some people seem to be okay with the fact that you got the job that you wanted. See, that's the progress on the way to the promise. But God has promised so much more. God has purposed you for so much more. There's so much more potential in you that God has put in you, and we can't rest and be okay with getting to the vicinity. It's okay that you got your logo. It's okay that your name of the business was accepted and you filed your paperwork. But now we have to plow through, push through, and move forward. And yes, there's a lot of hard work that goes forward. It's okay that you had a beautiful wedding, but there's work that needs to be done to have a thriving and wonderful marriage. It's okay that you had the child, but it's work that needs to be done to groom it and raise it up and raise him or her up as the wonderful gift that God has destined them to be to the world. It's okay. Let's stop resting and being okay in the vicinity. Some of us are okay with being on the fringes. Stop being okay with making promised vacations. We'll visit the promised land every now and then. We'll dip our toe in. We'll come before it. But we then go back to being comfortable. And we're okay with saying, hey, I was close enough to see it. I was close enough to experience it. I don't want to just experience it from time to time. God, this is where you're leading me. This is what you've promised. I'm moving forward in obedience, and I'm moving forward because you've promised it to me. That's where I want to reside. That's not where I want to visit. So to do that, we have to make sure that we are appropriating our progress to the promise. So now, when we see Israel, they've made lots of progress. They've been talking about it for years. Oh man, we're going to get there. Oh yeah. It's been a tough journey. And now, when they get there, they're afraid. See, here we also see that another lesson is that we can't prepare for where we are now. We have to stop preparing for where we are now. Matter of fact, when you prepare for where you are now, that's not preparing. That's hustling, trying to get your stuff in order. See, a lot of us are trying to prepare for where we are now. There's no preparation in where you are now. You're there. Prepare. It means that I have to get ready beforehand. Stop preparing for where you are now. Don't prepare for where you are now, but plan for where God is taking you. Plan for where you're headed and expect to get there. Have the expectation of getting there. I remember when my wife and I first got married, we were in this nice 2-bedroom apartment, and we were looking for a house. And my wife, she was getting furniture, starting shopping, doing all that other stuff, doing what she loves to do, trying to, make it look nice. So she was buying furniture for our house. We were actively looking. We were already approved, right? So we had already begun the process. We just hadn't realized the manifestation of the house. So she started preparing. For her to start buying furniture for our 2-bedroom apartment when we were actively pursuing the promise of a house would have been futile. It would have made no sense. Some of you are doing just that. You have been given the promise, you're moving forward in the process, but you're trying to make your right now place look like the promise. You're trying to make it as comfortable as you can. And God is saying, I'm not intending for your rest area to be comfortable, because you'll get comfortable in your rest area and you'll say, I've been here so long that now I kind of like it. Israel had been going through the wilderness for so long that the alternative was to stay there. And they had been there so long that some folks were okay with it. Stop getting comfortable in your rest area. God is saying, I've given you a promise. Stop preparing for where you are now. I need you to get ready for where I'm taking you and have an expectation that that's where you're going. And he's saying that this particular area, this process, was just a place of postponement. Stop getting comfortable in your place of postponement. He's saying, I postponed it because you have to complete the process. You're saying, since I don't want to go through the process, this is okay. I can see the promise. I know some friends that have businesses. That's good enough for me. Even though God has called me to own my own, I know some people that have written books. That's good enough for me. Some of you are okay with resting in your place of postponement. You can't dress up your place of postponement. You have to prepare. How do you prepare? See, in that analogy, my wife started buying furniture for our home. We had a 2-bedroom home. Then we go to a 2-bedroom apartment, let me say, a 2-bedroom apartment. Then we move. And in the process of us moving, I had to give her a glimpse of where God was taking us. Now, this wasn't the promise. I told her, I said, baby, this is just the place that we're going to rest for several years. Now, our intent was to rest there for 5. We've been there for 8, going on 8. Okay, it's okay. As long as we know Israel was there, they were there for 40, when they could have been there for a couple of days. As long as we know that we are headed toward the promise. We've been there a little longer. It's been a place of postponement, but we dress up our place of postponement like it's the promise. This is not the promise. So when my wife was buying furniture, I had to expose her to the greatness of what was to come. Even our place of postponement was a promotion. See, some of you get satisfied in the progress because your place of postponement still looks like promotion. Yes, from a 2-bedroom apartment to a 5-bedroom house is a promotion, but it's not the promise. So therefore, we see I had to expose her. And because of history, there was a natural fear. Baby, can we do this? Baby, is this for us? No, baby, this one ain't for us. This is just a rest area. See, it's funny how for those that travel on the road in highways and byways, there's a place that on some of the highways in Texas and in certain places in the South that is called Buc-ee's. Now, when you're driving on the highway, everybody's looking for Buc-ee's. Buc-ee's is a gas station, a convenience store, a delicatessen, a truck stop, and everything in between. A restaurant. Buc-ee's is everything to everybody. Buc-ee's is always packed, no matter what time, day or night you're driving. Buc-ee's has everything. They have candy, they have beef jerky, they have fresh jerky, they have packaged jerky, they have sausage on a stick, they have chocolate covered almonds, they have coffee, they have barbecue sandwiches, pulled pork sandwiches, they have everything. Buc-ee's is the bomb. Now, but what Buc-ee's is known for is the immaculately clean gas stations. So Buc-ee's, their gas stations are so clean that I will hold it for 50 plus miles if I got to use the restroom just to get to Buc-ee's. And so Buc-ee's is great, but it's a rest stop. No matter how clean their bathrooms are, no matter how wonderful the Buc-ee's experience is, you can get Buc-ee's merchandise and people are happy in Buc-ee's. No matter how great the experience is, Buc-ee's is not home. I know Buc-ee's is a rest area along the way of my destination. Some of y'all are getting stuck and satisfied at stopping at Buc-ee's. And so we can't continue to dress up our place of postponement. It's only the place of postponement. So when we're talking about a new normal, most people are okay with dressing up the place of postponement. This is not where we're going to reside. The children of Israel, the spies said, we're okay here, but two, they were abnormal. They were out of the ordinary. They were against the grain. They were in the minority. God is calling for a small remnant. God is calling for you to be in that minority of people to say, hey, we're going to push forward. We're not going to succumb to fear. We're going to go forward. This is a time of expansion. This is a time when you think about how to prepare for the expansion, not contraction. So God says, I need you to stop getting comfortable in your place of postponement. This is not your destination. Stop wasting time trying to make your destination, your rest area feel like your destination. We're talking about in the company of normal. This is what normal people are doing. I guarantee you the people that are going to come out of here thriving are the people that's planning right now in a time where everybody's contracting, planning for expansion. What are you doing? God's trying to expand you. But you can't be fearful and come together and shrivel up and shrink. God is trying to expand you. So we see you can't be satisfied with just coming to the vicinity. You must appropriate the progress to the promise. And so we have to prepare for where we're going, not for where we are now. So we're seeing this. And a large reason that the spies came back with a negative report is because of the comparison factor. Many people right now are suffering from the comparison factor, misappropriating the appropriate comparison. I said that because there is supposed to be a comparison factor. But what you are doing, what many people are doing, are comparing themselves to someone else. The spies, they came back and they said, we were small compared to them. We were like grasshoppers in their sight and in our sight. They first said, in our sight. That means we saw them and mentally we felt insignificant. We felt worthless. We felt like we could not succeed. We felt like this wasn't for us. They said, we saw the circumstance, we saw the environment, and we saw the promise, we experienced the promise and the truth of the promise. They're saying, we experienced the truth, but our minds instantly saw the challenge, and our minds said that we weren't good enough for it. See, some people right now, you're going through a period where God has given you great ideas. He's birthing something through you. He's saying, I put it in you. I know it's great because it's from me. And so he's put it in you. You have great ideas. You have great passion, but you're seeing the challenge and you're shriveling up and you're saying, I'm comparing myself to what I think it's going to look like, and I look small. I look insignificant. I was once having a conversation recently with someone, and they were saying, man, God has given me this. God wants me to do this. God wants me to do that. Oh, they're talking about television. They're talking about activity in movies. They're talking about all kinds of things and going out speaking and teaching and all these other things. And then there came a but. I told you, you start showing your butt, everything else is null and void. So then came a but. We said, but I look at people like so-and-so. I look at people like this person. I look at people like them, and these are the giants in the game. I can't, I'm not like that, man. I can't do this. This was a real conversation that I had this week with someone. You tell me that God has given you so much. God has directed you to do so much, and then you give me a but so-and-so is doing it like this, but this ministry is doing that, but this business owner is doing that, this person is doing that, and you get scared and you start comparing yourself. It's the comparison factor. You start comparing yourself to other people that you think are more significant, but God has given you a glimpse. How has he given you a glimpse? Are starting to come to you for advice. People are wanting you to express your expertise. People are wanting you to be a part of their organizations. People are wanting you to be on their teams. He's giving you a glimpse. People are starting to show that they think that you're valuable. They don't know how great or how valuable and your worth yet, but they know that you are. People are starting to give you a glimpse of that. And they're starting to come to you. They're starting to ask you questions. They're starting to recognize a change. They're starting to recognize some forward momentum and some progress. See, your progress, as it relates to the promise, is supposed to be motivational and inspirational to you and to others. And so they're starting to see this. So they're starting to come to you. But you're looking at others and you're saying, I'm not as great as them. You're comparing yourself to others. It's the comparison factor. The spies, they instantly compare themselves to others, and that will always restrict you from maintaining or maximizing your potential. See, I mentioned that there is supposed to be a comparison, but most of us are comparing ourselves to the wrong people. You're comparing yourself to others, but the comparison for my success or my comparison was never supposed to be with others. My comparison for my success was always intended to be with what I could do through obedience, or what I should do, or what I should accomplish through obedience with God. So I'm not comparing myself to you. I'm not comparing myself to others. I can't compare myself to other pastors. I have to compare myself with what I should accomplish. What did I accomplish versus what I should have accomplished through God? Because along that journey, as I'm comparing myself to where God is directing me, along that journey, it keeps me focused. Am I being obedient? Have I achieved what I was supposed to achieve? Have I achieved with 10 congregants what I was supposed to achieve? Let me not focus on the people that have 1,500. Let me focus on the 10, the 12 that I got. So God, have I been obedient? Have I been faithful? What percentage of the 12 have grown significantly? What percentage of the 12 are now making disciples that are making disciples? What percentage? I'm not comparing myself with who you are or who you're proclaiming to be or your presentation. I got to compare myself to who God has called me to be, who he's purposed me to be. The comparison is not with anybody else. With my family, I can't compare myself to the father down the street. I have to compare myself with the father that God is showing me who that I'm supposed to be. With as a husband, I can't act like the husband over there because that's not who God has called me to be. I have to compare myself. God, did I accomplish what you've told me to accomplish? God, okay, am I successful here? God, am I successful in my communication? Am I successful in how I'm to show love? Am I successful in how I'm to forgive? Am I successful in my business dealings? Am I successful in my teaching? Am I successful in my grooming of other people? Am I successful in my mentoring? Am I successful in being mentored? Am I successful in my prayer life? Am I successful in my faith walk? Am I successful? That's my measure of success. What's stopping most people from achieving what God has destined for them to achieve is that they're comparing others, themselves with others. God said, no, I made you one of a kind. If I wanted you to be them, I wouldn't need you. See, I left the 99 to pursue the one of a kind. I got them. I don't need you to be them. I need you to be you. Here is where I'm taking you. Here is the promise. So I can't compare myself and my success be determined on somebody else's walk. We may be headed in the same direction, but we're on different roads. I'll never forget when my wife told me, she said, baby, there are people that you were called to impact that I won't be able to impact. But nevertheless, I'm going to move forward in working with the people here, and I'm going to support you as you impact the people that you're called to impact. See, our measure of success, her measure of success, is how she runs her race and supports me in running my race. My measure of success is how I run my race and support her in running her race. But most of all, we must make sure we're running to the same destination, God's purpose for our lives. The new normal that I'm challenging you to do and to take on is to not succumb to fear, is to not play the comparison game with others, is to pursue the promise, is to recognize your progress as it relates to the promise. The new normal. See, I want to be in the vicinity, I want to be in the company of people that don't get satisfied with the visitation to the promised land. I want to be in the company of people that now make this the standard. See, the reason why when my wife and I, when we were looking for the house, I kept driving her to this area is because it seemed like a foreign destination from where she originated from. And I need to expose her to this place. This is where we're coming. This has to be a part of your normal. This can no longer be a bucket list item, but you have to recognize the reality of the standard that's being set. See, God took them to the promised land, not so they could say, oh, it's okay that we came here, but that he wanted them to recognize the reality of the standard. Your new normal needs to be the excellence, the promise, the reality of the standard of the promise that God is setting. God is setting a standard for his people. Not a standard of us retreating, not a standard of us constricting and retiring into our wormholes, but a standard of expansion. The kingdom of God is a kingdom of expansion. So God is saying, this is not the time for you to do what's normal. What's normal is for you to get fearful. People that will be successful are the people right now that's planning expansion, planning where God is taking them, not preparing to settle in the place of postponement. I thank God for where he's taking us. I pray that this message was beneficial to you. I pray that this message resonated with you, and I pray that you share it with the people of God. Don't let it stop here. Don't rest here, because this is where God is taking us. We're not in a place of retreat. We're in a place where he wants us to participate in the fulfillment of the promise. I thank you all. Now, some of you may be asking yourself, how do I maximize the potential that God has placed in me? And for starters, you have to, one, recognize him for who he is. You have to recognize him as the Lord of your life. So you have to recognize him as Savior and Lord. When we talk about salvation, people think about salvation as simply a going to heaven free card, a get out of hell free card. It's not about that. The whole idea of salvation had to do with somebody being in a tight spot, a narrow position. And when God saves us, we now have the liberty and the freedom to spread our wings and to be exactly who he's called us to be. We have the freedom, the fortitude, the authority, and the wherewithal to now expand and be who he's called us to be and to maximize our potential. So first and foremost, if you have not accepted Christ as your Lord and Savior, that's the first step, making him Lord of your life. And if you hadn't done that, just pray this simple prayer. Say, God, I recognize that I've lived a life apart from you as a sinner. But God, I want to experience a transformation in you. I want to have a relationship with you. God, I confess your Son, Jesus Christ, as my Lord and Savior. I'm thankful for the work that he's done for me in dying for my sins. And God, I invite you into my life as Lord and Savior. If you believe those, if you've said those words and believe them, close it out with Jesus' name. Welcome. That's the first step to being able to maximize your potential and to establish a new normal. Because now, regardless of what happened prior to, there's now a but in your history. You were once one way, but now you're saved by grace. Now you have the freedom to be who you were called to be. You were once constricted by your own selfishness and having to maintain your life by yourself. But now God planned for your life and he's directing your life. And you're now on a path to the promise. That's the first thing. Also, some of you may get discouraged. You may have participated in glimpses of the promise, and you may be fearful, especially during this time and the circumstance. And it's always good to come in fellowship and prayer with others. And if that's you, if you just need prayer and somebody to stand with you in prayer, we'll stand with you in prayer. All you got to do is text the word prayer followed by your name to 972-787-1761. Text the word prayer followed by your name to 972-787-1761, and we will have somebody contact you directly and pray with you and stand with you. The Bible says, where two or more are gathered in my name, I will be in the midst of them also, working on their behalf. So let us come together in agreement in prayer. If that's you, just text the word prayer followed by your name, and we will contact you directly to 972-787-1761. And in others, some of you, even though we're in stay-at-home orders and by ourselves, you still need somebody to walk with you in this process. If you need a shepherd, if you need a pastor, if you need somebody to walk with you, feed you, help guide you, empower you, inspire you, and help develop you and grow you, I'd love to be your pastor. That's why I'm here. And if that's you, and you say, hey, Pastor Chris, I would love to see or to experience you helping me along the way, just text the word covering followed by your name to 972-787-1761, and we'll reach out to you directly and welcome you into the North Bridge family and walk with you along this journey. 972-787-1761. Just text the word covering. If that's you, I'd love to be your pastor and walk with you along this journey. I love you all. Be blessed. I'm praying to God that this message has blessed you. I'm praying to God that you have been, you will take this and run with it and appropriate it to your life so that you will see a transformation in your life. We need a new normal. I want you to be in the company of people that have established a new normal of victory. Be blessed. I love you.